Hi, I'm former NFL quarterback Gus Frerotte. I played quarterback 15 years in the NFL. This is my show called Huddle Up with Gus. Each week I team up with my longtime friend Dave Hager, and we talk with guests about how sports shape their lives. Pro athletes, business executives, community leaders, everyone has a story to tell about sports. We invite you to Huddle Up with Gus. This week in the Huddle.
He was an all-American kid growing up in America's heartland. This competitive and hardworking athlete loved sports. Focused and determined, he always kept his eye on the ball. Basketball, that is. This baller dribbled his way into junior college, posted up at Rice, and then made a fast break for Harvard where he earned an M.B.A. He now runs one of the most powerful sports media companies in the world. Please welcome to the Huddle, Kevin Rabbitt.
We're here at the beautiful Energy Innovation Center, and we're bringing into the Huddle today a special guest who, just one of the largest companies in all of America, don't you think, Dave?
A quiet giant.
Quiet giant, yeah. I like that. So joining us today in the Huddle is Kevin Rabbitt. Kevin, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate you coming in and getting in the Huddle and talking and telling us a little bit about your life and how sports shaped that.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Well, thank you. So, one of the things we like to do is ask those kind of early questions that a lot of people don't know, because, a lot of people can look at your bio and see all the accomplishments you've had. But what we like to do is get into really how you started your life and like what influenced you. Who was that first person or first idol or what influenced you to really love sports?
Yeah, that's great. I grew up in Kansas City, and I'd really say sports was my entire life. So either playing sports, watching sports, talking about sports. And really the two people that had the biggest impact were my father, who was he was a college basketball player and won the NAIA National Championship in 1964. And that was always kind of a focal point of knowing that he did that and how much fun that was for him and how proud he was of that. And then my older brother, who was 3 years older, and essentially that's who I competed against every day. I think it's such an advantage to have an older sibling that kicks your butt on a regular basis in sports. And I didn't even play against kids my own age until I think I got to middle school. I just played on his teams, and I got to play against him. And we had a big thing in our neighborhood that whatever sport you played, so basketball, football, baseball outside, the winning team got to go in our basement, and they got to hit a certain, put a certain song on in the jukebox, and it was "We Are the Champions" by Queen, and you got to sing it to the losing team. And so I still have nightmares of my brother like saying, "No time for losers," and pointing at me. So that was actually a big influence.
You still use that as motivation today?
Yeah, I sure do, and it was great when I got to the stage where I could beat him because I got to sing it to him. And things, and he no longer wanted to play with me anymore. So
yeah, so do you randomly just send him that song and say, "Hey, remember when I kicked your butt?"
He knows that. So yeah.
Well, Kansas City is such a great sports town. You must have followed all the local teams.
Oh, absolutely. The Royals were great then. Kansas City Kings were around at that time, down the Sacramento Kings. I remember being at the game when Daryl Dawkins broke the backboard in Kansas City.
Chocolate Thunder.
Yeah. They couldn't figure out how to get a new basket in there, and they didn't know what to do with the fans, so we got to actually walk down the court and get a piece of the glass while they were figuring out what to do. So George Brett was always my favorite athlete of all time.
Yeah.
I've got to know him in my adult life, and he's not disappointed. He is the competitor that he comes across in baseball when you're playing golf with him or any other sport.
Yeah, he always wants to win.
He usually does.
Yeah.
He's got some stories too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
I think those for a different podcast.
Right.
Yeah. So one thing I always my father and I, we collected cards together. Did you collect cards or anything like that?
Yeah, we did.
They used to be big when we were younger.
Yeah, baseball cards were especially. So we get the whole set. I remember getting the 1980 entire set. I think I still got those somewhere. And then we would collect random ones that we would trade then across neighbor kids, and it was a big part of growing up.
So did your parents? Did they? Sports is different now. You have kids, and it's so different. Everything's regimented, and you got to be here. So when you were a kid and you had to play on Little League or whatever it was, did your parents always go to your games, and were they always supportive? And
yeah, they were at every game all the way actually through college. I think they made most games. They were sports a big part of their life as well. and they've been big supporters of me. But I would agree it's very different now. I mean, and when we grew up, you played 4 sports, right? Every season was something different, and you didn't specialize at age 9 into a particular sport. And I think it was good for your body to play different sports and muscles to develop different ways.
For your mind too, there's less burnout and all. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like one of my favorite things of growing up was we would just go and we'd ride our bike from house to house and get kids, and we'd go to the local field and we just played.
Yeah.
And that's what I regret is I don't see kids doing that today. Was that a big part of what you guys grew up?
Absolutely. I remember thinking the entire summer what I would do is either myself and my brother or my next door neighbor, Ross, who was my brother's age, we would get our bikes, ride down to, we called it a country club, but I think it was a glorified park that had a small membership to it. We'd play tennis all day, probably play 3-4 hours of tennis, go swimming for a little while, come back, play ping pong in the basement, and then go do your baseball game that night. And that was, you would repeat and pick a different sport. Maybe it's wiffle ball the next day. If it was raining outside, my next door neighbor and I, we would have tournaments in ping pong where my right hand would play his left hand, and then my left hand would play his right hand, and you hope that both right hands won, so there'd be a championship.
Right.
Now, speaking of wiffle ball, it's funny now, even at age 49, driving around different suburbs of Pittsburgh, I'll go, boy, that looks like that'd be a good wiffle ball field. It's still thinking.
I think that all the time. I mean, there's a house on the field club, the corner lot on 11. That's got a straight uphill, and it'd be a perfect wiffle ball field playing uphill.
Oh yeah. So Keith Kachuk, he played in the NHL for a long time. Yeah. They called him Big Walt, right? Yep. So every year he has a home. He's from Boston, and so they have a home out in the Cape. Every year that he has a wiffle ball tournament, and he invites different people there, and it's one of those drinking tournaments, but it's wiffle ball. So if you think you can't hit a wiffle ball when you're sober, imagine when you're having a little fun with a bunch of hockey players.
Is a lawn chair still the umpire?
Yeah, definitely. So understanding like how we all grew up. And so what was that one moment from when you were a kid that you remember sports that really stayed with you? Was it whether you were playing or watching somebody or seeing a championship? What was that?
I remember, I think there's probably 2. So one was I was in 5th grade. My dad reminds me of this all the time. Playing in Great American Basketball League, so the local rec basketball league. And I remember we had lost to this team earlier in the season. It was our only loss, and we were playing them in the championship. And it was a cold, snowy day. I had cut the tips of my gloves off so I could shoot before the game outside and get ready. And I remember my dad saying, it's okay if you guys don't win this game. I said, don't worry, Dad, we're gonna win this game. And I remember, I think that was my all-time high of my life. I think I had 35 points. I think I had like the first 16 points of the game, and I just remember. In retrospect, you remember kind of how hard you worked, and then you got reward for working and desire to win. And then quite a bit later in high school, we always had really good high school teams. We'd have 3 to 5 Division I players on our team in those years. And I started from sophomore year on, and we never could quite get to where we wanted to be. And then my senior year, we went undefeated and won the state championship. On a buzzer beater, a 3-pointer at the buzzer to win state in the large class of Kansas. And that group of players, 3 of us went on to play Division I. The other 2 were great role players, and then we had a 6th guy that played NAIA. But that group will be friends for life. We get together once or twice a year still, and it's like we haven't even left each other, because it was a group that worked all summer to try and achieve something that we had fallen short, even with kind of more talented teams in the years before.
I bet the crowds in high school Kansas were tremendous, right?
They were outstanding, I mean, we were, our high school had, over 2,000 kids, but, we would probably have 2,000 fans for every game.
Wow.
And then, you get to the state championship, it's probably 7,000, 8,000 people at the game.
What arena did you play the state championship in?
Emporia State University, so it's a Division II school. When we won, this is an interesting story. When we won, I passed the ball to right over the half-court line to a guy named Greg Gurley, who ended up playing at Kansas. Greg caught it, turned, shot a 3-pointer at the buzzer. We win by 2 points. We were down by 1 at the time. all of our fans, our student section, jumped up at the same time because they were excited, and they landed on the bleachers, and the bleachers collapsed. So people were flowing onto the court. No one really got hurt, but it was amazing.
Wow.
I still watch that video, and you see people jump, and it's just flowing onto the court because the bleachers had collapsed.
Right, and that's what started, like all the fans rushing the court. It was an accident, and their fans just started. Now you see it all the time. People just bum rushing, and you win a state championship or national championship.
Right, wow.
Kevin, we're going to get a little bit about your high school experience. We've all had different high school experiences. Dave, we don't like to talk about his anymore because his are kind of crazy.
They were limited also, athletically.
But
I was a good fan.
You were, yeah. We had Ryan Fitzpatrick on a few weeks ago, and so Dave was from Tucson, Ryan's from Gilbert, Arizona, and so they had a little bit of Arizona rival here in Pittsburgh. So it was kind of funny how.
Real short, the worst homer job I've ever seen from a referee was in.
You're still Gilbert. On that? I thought we were over that.
I thought I finished talking about it, but at Gilbert, the refs were from Gilbert. Never seen anything like it.
So when you got into your high school, so we all make that transition from like 8th grade to high school, and that's tough for a lot of people, So what was that like for you when you went from, we're all playing sports with all your buddies, and all of a sudden you're in high school, and some things change, some things stay the same?
Yeah, for me it was a good transition. I remember, I think probably my worst athletic year ever was 8th grade. I hadn't grown, and other kids had grown. I remember just being, I don't know how I went from being good to being, not very good. And so as I got to high school, I saw it as kind of a new opportunity to reestablish myself in sports. I played 2 sports. I played soccer and I played basketball. And I played, I don't even think this happens anymore, but I played on the freshman team of both, when I was a freshman. Ended up having great coaches in both of those that really helped me develop. It was the best thing. I think I was disappointed I wasn't playing JV on these, but played freshman, and that was probably the best part of my development. And then from sophomore year on, I started in varsity after those.
Wow.
And so that transition was really about, I think, 2 great freshman coaches that really helped me develop in both those sports.
And that's important too, because there's so many people that are disappointed if they don't make the JV, if not varsity or whatever. Sometimes you got to play, you got to get minutes and get better, and that's what Kevin did. If there wasn't a freshman team, you may have sat the bench as a JV player, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think just getting reps in or whatever you're doing is
right.
more important than saying you're on whatever team you're on.
Right.
And also having an influence like a great coach that understands and can communicate. Coaches make such a big difference in kids' lives in high school, and we see it all the time. If they don't have a good coach, you guys were just talking about Fox Chapel. If there's not a good coach, then sometimes things can happen in a different way that people don't want to go out, right? And if you have a good coach, then you want to go and play. And it seems like you had that kind of experience.
I certainly did. I had great coaches. Again, both freshman coaches were outstanding, and they were not kind of full-time teachers. One had been a college soccer player, and one had formerly been a coach, but and they came back to coach those teams because they really wanted to, and they had a big impact. And then I was fortunate to have great varsity coaches throughout as well. My younger brother is a high school coach now, and so I have a lot of respect for folks that spend that amount of time trying to shape young kids' lives and deal with parent issues and other things that get in the way as well of just trying to coach.
And just a disclaimer, both Kevin and my kids both go to Fox Chapel, and they're all great coaches. So we just
I would absolutely agree with that.
We want to establish that.
We have this great thing called editing, Dave. So if we don't like something, we can take it out. But no, I was just trying to make the point that my kids didn't want to play certain sports because they knew that a coach at Central wasn't somebody they wanted to be around because other kids talk. And great coaches, usually develop great players because they understand them. They know how to deal with them. They know how to put them through the ringer. Like my high school coach was my wife's father, and Harry. He coached for 42 years, and Harry was tough as they come in football. But everybody respected him, and everybody wanted to play for him. So coaches come in all different shapes and sizes, and can make a real difference in a kid's life.
Absolutely.
So you went through a little bit about your one of your greatest moments was you guys winning the state championship, but you didn't get there because you were just there. So talk a little bit about that hard work you had to put in all the time.
Yeah, it was basketball was always my favorite of the sports. So I worked at basketball year round. I loved soccer, but soccer I don't think I put as much time into. And so it was a ongoing routine that I would do. It would be, if it was in the summertime, it'd be an hour and a half, 2 hour routine of hitting, ball handling, shooting, and then in addition to that, doing weightlifting and other conditioning. And when it was in season or still school year, it'd be a shorter version of that. But that was a big part of it. And then as a team, we all got together and we would meet at someone's house and we would do workouts together. We would meet at the gym and do workouts together. We play in the same summer leagues. And then in the pure form, not what it is today, we played AAU basketball too. Certainly me and the other two guys that played Division I. At that point in time, Kansas City was probably the hottest that there's been in basketball. And they've written articles about this in the Kansas City Star where I think there was like 20 to 25 Division I players when I was a senior coming out of the high school area there. And we won the Kansas side state championship and were ranked nationally in USA Today. Another team won the Missouri side, and they were ranked nationally in USA Today as well. And so we had two different AAU teams that were from Kansas City, and both teams were all friends. Both teams toured around, and we played, I think, 30, 35 games in the summer against people like Penny Hardaway and Sean Bradley, and and that was a big moment for us because we all realized. I think we played 31 games. I think we were 28-3. One of our losses was to the other Kansas City team. We lost to Tyus Edney. We lost to Travis Best, but we had beaten Anthony Hardaway, we had beaten Sean Bradley, and that was kind of a moment where we all realized that we could play, this sport at a bigger level, not just Kansas City in high school.
So Sean Bradley being 7'6", like how did you guys fare inside against that?
We certainly didn't have a 7'6" guy. Yeah. Our biggest guy was probably 6'10". Ended up going playing at Navy, but I remember I was going down a fast break and he was the only one back, Sean Bradley was, and so I was just going right at him. I didn't know what I was going to do, so I just jumped as high as I could, put the ball over my arm this way and threw it up over my head. And my hip only got to his hip. I hit his hip, and they called a foul on him, and the ball went in. So it was a pure luck shot, but it was a 3-point play.
We're gonna have to find that footage.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to find that footage and just posterizing Sean Bradley. But you were talking about like soccer. Like when I grew up here in outside of Pittsburgh, I didn't really know what soccer was. I mean, I kind of knew what it was, but nobody really played it. Right. And so for you to even play soccer in high school, I don't even know if our high schools had it that much around here when I was growing up, back in the 80s.
Right.
Tucson they did. It was decent, but I don't know about around
I don't think anybody really wanted to play soccer here because it wasn't big.
Yeah, it's
in the
also
rain
a big
and the
football
mud.
town, right? Soccer was pretty big in Kansas City at the time. We had an indoor soccer team, the Kansas City Comets, that was a professional team, and they had generated a lot of excitement. But soccer at that point in time is kind of like lacrosse today, right? I'd never seen lacrosse, and it's all over now.
Yeah, my kids played. They loved it. They didn't want to play baseball because they,
too slow, I'm sure.
Well, they were growing up in St. Louis.
Yeah.
It was slow, and there was a lot of St. Louis is a huge baseball town, and everybody wanted to play baseball, and so they were one of like 20 kids on the team, and they'd play 2 innings and they'd sit.
Yep.
And then they played lacrosse and found out, hey, I can hit my brother with this stick. Then they fell in love with it.
2 for 1. I know.
Yeah, they got a 2 for 1.
So you probably growing up in Kansas City, your dream as a basketball player is probably play at KU, I would imagine.
Every kid that grew up in Kansas, yes.
When did you start getting the feeling, hey, you know what, I might be able to play on this next level?
That was probably after my sophomore year of high school. I'd mentioned my father was a college basketball player. My goal in life had always been at that point in time to be a Division I basketball player. And no one really put that goal in my head, but that's what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And certainly would hope to have played at Kansas, or Kansas State was great at the time as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten to, at that point in time, Lon Kruger was the head coach at Kansas State, and I've gotten to know him. And
is that like the Mitch Richmond era?
Mitch Richmond, Steve Henson.
Yeah.
I've got to know all those guys, and I remember saying to Coach Kruger one time we were golfing, I said, hey, you remember when you passed on me and you didn't take me? And he goes, Kevin, I stand by that evaluation still.
You might have got their team GPA out now. We'll talk about that.
Yeah. We don't need to talk about that one either. But and I think that when you have those aspirations, for me, the first letter I ever got was from University of Michigan to play football, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to Michigan, but it didn't happen. and then I started getting some other letters and understanding it. So were you getting recruited by a lot of people? How did that work for you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and again, since our team was so good, I think Roy Williams was almost every one of our games. He ended up taking, my buddy to play for him.
Yeah.
And so you got a lot of exposure. But yeah, I was recruited kind of broadly. So Oregon was recruiting me for a long time. They came to a lot of games. A lot of Ivy League schools, so Princeton and Brown, and then some of the Missouri Valley schools would come and watch as well. But I wasn't. I don't think there was anyone that just said that they had to have me on their team, and so it wasn't like I was widely recruited, but certainly had a lot of exposure with a lot of people coming to watch me.
Did Pete Carrill ever call you, or?
Yeah, Pete Carrill did. Yeah, and a guy named Jan Van Bredikoff was his top assistant. I spent a lot of time on the phone with him.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So now you're a senior, right? And you got all these schools to choose from. So now you pick Rice.
I didn't pick Rice originally, so I ended up not having a ton to choose from. So Oregon dropped off at the end. They didn't offer me, and so Princeton, Brown both wanted me to come, and my parents said, that'd be great if you want to go there. And I really wanted a scholarship though. I didn't want my parents to have to pay for school, and so I turned both of them down. And Pete Carrill actually called a guy named Wayne Zook, who was the head coach at Monmouth College in New Jersey, and used to be his assistant, and said, you should take Kevin. So he took me sight unseen at that point in time, based on Pete Carrill's recommendation. Wow. And so I went to Monmouth College my freshman year, Northeast Conference. Robert Morris was always our big rival.
Yeah.
We were good. I think we won 19, 20 games that year. I got mono though, I got sick. And so I played in the first game against St. John's. I didn't play any other games after that. And at that point in time, I realized that maybe I should have thought about an Ivy League school from an education standpoint. As much as I liked Monmouth, I was thinking, I think I could have kind of got a little bit higher academic school. And Rice had always recruited me, and one of my best friends a year below me had decided to go there. And so they said, hey, if you're interested in coming still, we'd love to have you. So I left Monmouth, and I didn't want to sit out again. I just had a redshirt year, so I committed to Rice, and then I played for 1 year in a junior college in Iowa, Marshalltown Community College. Yeah. 10 Division I basketball players living in a motel in the middle of Iowa. The motel was called the Moonlight Budget Motel. And basically all we did was play basketball and every once in a while go to class.
I've spent many Thanksgivings surprisingly in Marshalltown, Iowa. Both my parents are from Marshalltown. I went to Marshalltown High School. Yeah, so I know Marshalltown.
Man, I didn't know that. Your parents are from Iowa?
Yeah, my dad went to Grinnell, and
the Moonlight Budget Motel was right across the street from the Beat Club, the one nightclub that was right there. It was across Highway 30. So
if it was near the movie theater, because I remember that was what we had to do, was go to the movie.
That's the only thing to do.
The one showing was the one movie, and we'd watch it and then go back.
So it was a long way to get to Rice, but then I played 3 years at Rice after that.
So we went through kind of your early years, now we're into your college years. You guys had a great connection of Marshalltown, and where you were at a JUCO, and then you go to Rice after that. What was your experience like at Rice?
Yeah, that was a great experience overall. Rice at the time was in the Southwest Conference, right? So it's Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, TCU, SMU, Baylor. So all Texas schools, all rivals. And we were good. We had just kind of come through a period where they'd been one of the worst teams in the conference. I got there, they had finished in the top 3 the year before. We thought we were going to win it my first year, and we ended up getting second. I think the only school across my career those 3 years we had a losing record against was Texas Tech. So we had good teams.
Right.
And for me personally, I played a lot. So I was the backup point guard as a sophomore. I was a starter after that. But it was a pretty humbling experience too, right? You start to realize, how talented people are. I mean, Texas had 3 point guards that played in the NBA, and they're all playing together at the same time. It's pretty humbling that you realize how hard you have to work just to compete with people, and you got to find ways to get on the court by doing things that everyone was a scorer before, right? And you got to find other ways to get on the court by playing defense, by running the team, by playing harder than everybody else.
Arkansas was in the conference.
They had just left by the time I got there.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So it was just Texas schools at that point.
You got to dodge the 40 minutes of hell then, I guess.
We did, yeah. It was what a great environment though, because every one of these schools were rivals. So I think we sold out every conference game. And
that would have been.
other than TCU, I think everyone sold out their buildings every time. So.
Yeah, that's great. So a lot of transitions you made when you were younger, and playing with all your buddies and understanding, because even in high school, you mentioned you had a lot of talent on your teams, and so you probably had to figure out all those different things that you were talking about at Rice. So all that experience you had growing up and playing with all that talent probably helped you a lot when you were at Rice.
It helped a ton, yeah. And by the time I got to Rice again, I was not going to be the league scorer, but going back and playing with, when I was a kid playing with my older brother, right, I wasn't going to be the leading scorer in whatever we're playing if I'm playing with all the kids that are 3 years older. So you had to figure out a way to make a pass or get a steal or to do something if you want to get picked on a team. And largely the way my college career was, right? If I was going to be on the court, it was going to be because I was running the team as an extension of the coach, was playing great defense, and hit open shots, but knowing the personalities of everyone else on the team and getting the ball to the right people at the right time.
I was going to ask, you guys did participate in March Madness then?
We ended up making the NIT. We were unbelievably disappointed. So we went to
finishing second.
Finishing second at that point in time, yeah. And so we thought for sure we were going to get an at-large bid. We didn't. We went up to Wisconsin and played at Wisconsin the first round of the NIT. They had Michael Fenley at the time. Oh, wow. We beat them, and then went to Boston College and lost to Bill Curley. One thing I didn't mention, my very first game at Rice. It was a big moment. I forgot this one, but. We played the opening game of ESPN. It was just give you how good we were at that time. We played the Fab Five when they were sophomores on the opening game of ESPN. So Kansas played Georgia the first game, and then we played the Fab Five in the Rockets Arena in Houston.
Wow!
And we had them down almost the entire game. They ended up beating us by about 6 or 8, and that was my first entree into Rice basketball.
So you were on Jalen Rose then, or what?
I was, yeah. So I guarded him, and I played 15, 20 minutes that game or something like that, and. I remember I came in at the end, and I'm face guarding him when they're up by like 4, and he goes, "Oh, they brought you in to foul me." I said, "No, I'm going to steal the ball from him." I probably said it a little more direct than that. Yeah. And then, we were jamming back and forth. I fouled him. He made 2 free throws.
But give you a wink afterwards.
Yeah. But you've played against some of the greatest talent ever in college basketball, which has got to be a great experience. Probably. You can't forget those memories. I mean, that's just amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, from your sports career, there's a camaraderie, right? Even if someone was a competitor, there's a kind of mutual respect. If I run into someone now that I played against, it's always fun to catch up, and there's that kind of mutual respect and camaraderie. And but the talent level that I got to play against was unbelievable.
No, that is great. So then, so it's your senior year. You finished basketball. What was like? So now, like your college career is over. What were you thinking? What was that next step in your mind? What were you going to do?
Yeah, I really had no idea. So I was getting married. So my wife was an All-American track runner at Rice, and so we got married.
She's faster than you?
Yeah, at least 2 times around the track. not necessarily on one straightaway, but and so we got married. And I ended up just taking a job with Deloitte Consulting because I thought it was a great way to learn some business skills. And it was one of those analyst programs. You go work for a couple of years and you go off and get your MBA. And so I did that. And I was actually really enjoying it. I was learning lots of things, but I got the bug to coach. And so I decided to go back and become a college basketball coach.
And where did you do that? Where'd you go?
Texas State. It was called Southwest Texas at the time, so small Division I school. Mm-hmm. I was the third assistant. I was making a whopping salary of $6,500 a year, and I was our head coach was a great guy. He was one of the 2 youngest head coaches in the country, and we had unbelievable talent. We had a guy named Jeff Foster who played for the Indiana Pacers for 14 years. Yeah. It's amazing how much better you are as a coach when you get the leading rebounder in the country on your team.
Right.
And then there we made the NCAA tournament. We went and of all things got to go back to Kansas City to play in Kemper Arena for the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
Well, that's cool. Is that where is that? St. Angelo?
No,
or
it's
is
in
that-
just south of Austin. So
Okay.
it's in San Marcos.
Oh,
but it's
San Marcos.
30 minutes south of Austin. So
Okay.
it was worked out well because my wife got to drive up to Austin. She was an accountant, so my $6,500 wasn't going to cover
Right,
it. So we needed her help there.
Right. So one question I always had about basketball in this system, because you see, like even in the NBA, you know, there's 4 or 5 sometimes on a team. What, like, I understand like the assistants in football.
Yep.
I don't understand like what was your role as a third assistant in basketball at South?
Well, the way I think there's more resources now for Division I schools. There's more than just 3 assistants, but really, so one of the assistants would focus on the big guys. One of the assistants would focus on the guards. Since I was a guard, I helped him with the guards. The scouting for games, so all the scouting reports, we divided equally amongst the 3 of us. So we just did every third game. We would develop the scouting report, go over with the head coach, then review it with the team. But I got a lot of the things that no one else wanted to do, right? Making sure kids are going to class, making sure they kept their grades up, making sure that they behaved. And I wasn't that much older than them, right? I was only a couple years out of school, so I was able to connect with all the players quite easily.
What about recruiting?
At that point in time, the third assistant could not recruit. So you could recruit on campus.
Rule?
That was a rule, yeah.
Okay.
You could recruit on campus, but you couldn't go on the road. You could only have 2 assistants go on the road at the time.
Yeah, so I was telling you about my son Gunnar. He's at William & Mary, and he's a student assistant with the football team. And he's on Twitter and social media, like helping the coach with the kids and who come to William & Mary, all that stuff. So I don't know if that's considered recruiting, but he's doing a lot of the work.
Well, I would write letters to kids. I could make phone calls, but I couldn't be off campus evaluating kids.
No, you couldn't.
Yeah.
You didn't want to do that anyway. That's why I never wanted to coach college football, was because of just recruiting and driving and going house to house.
A lot of dinners at people's dining room tables and
Absolutely.
negotiating.
Oh yeah, I can remember when Coach Rader recruited me from the University of Tulsa, and he came and my mom put on the biggest spread for him, right? And I'm like, Mom, what do you do? Well, Coach is coming. We got to cook for him,
right?
You know, and so
coaches loved your mom.
Oh yeah. I still talk to Coach Rader all the time. And he's like, man, remember that meal your mom? I said, I don't remember, Coach, but it must have been pretty good if you remember it. But so, one of the amazing things to me is that you've been through. People see where you are today, but it took a lot of work. Like all these transitions really helped you probably to get where you are today. To me, that's what I want people to understand is that we go through all these things in life, and it's teaching us some lessons that we're going to carry with us. Just like your basketball when you're young carried with you to Rice, and probably all the other things you learned. And one of the things that athletes really have a hard time with is that they don't understand that the skills that they have acquired in business, because they've played a sport and dealing with whether you're the leader of the team or the guy that you're one of the players, but you're just trying to be a part of it. So, explain to that how that kind of got you to where because I know after that you went to Harvard Business School at some point.
I did, yeah. Right? So I left coaching and went to work for the Houston Rockets running their arena football team. So I was in the business side of sports at that point in time.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got the bug. I knew I wanted to be able to run a business. And I'll make the link here between sports here in a second. But, and so I said, well, I need to have a lot harder kind of business skills as well, in addition to the leadership skills and things I had. And that's why I went to Harvard and, really honed in on things that I hadn't learned before, on finance and strategy, and kind of got some hard skills to go along with it. But I still say to this day, the best education I ever got was being a point guard in basketball. Because, similar to being a quarterback, you have to know the personalities of every player that's on that team. You have to know if they need to be yelled at or if they need to be encouraged. You got to know where they like to catch the ball to make shots. You got to know what they do on every play in addition to yourself. And you got to be able to communicate really well. You have leadership skills, communication skills, and then one of the skills that I think happens in football, happens in basketball, is fast decision making. Using high quality kind of analytics with the data in front of you to make a fast decision. Right. That transfers to business as well as anything. Now, you don't have to make a decision in 10 seconds or 30 seconds in business, but you can still make a decision in a day or a week instead of letting it linger on forever. Just fast decision making is something I learned in sports that I would say is one of the most valuable skills that I've come across.
Right, executive decision making. There's that term, and I think it is. You're right, because sometimes if you're in a big meeting and you can't let this get away, you got to be quick on your feet. Just like in football, I got to know if they're blitzing, I got to know what guy to throw it to and to make that first down or whatever that is. And it all translates. And a lot of times athletes don't understand how that all
I
works.
certainly think it translates. I mean, I remember Willis Wilson was our head coach at Rice, and into the game playing Baylor, he would call a timeout. He explains what play we're going to run, and I had enough respect for me. I spoke up. I was like, Coach, we can't even run that play in practice. We're not going to win the game with that play. He's like, what do you want to play? I'm like, everyone thinks we're going to go to Adam or Torrey. Scott's wide open. Scott's going to hit a jumper here. Scott, you going to hit the jumper? Yep, I'm going to hit the jumper. We ran the play to Scott. He hit the jumper. Thank God, because it worked out that way. But that was that type of situation where you've got to be able to speak up and willing to speak up, concisely say with logic or with facts on what the right thing to do is. Yeah, that's exactly the same in a business meeting.
Yeah, no, it really is, because I've been transitioning into business over the last couple of years, and it was a difficult transition for me because I've only known sports, I've coached sports, played football for 25 years and coached it. And so to go into the business world and then go to meet somebody that's the CEO of this company was difficult to try to tell him what's on this paper, and I got to show him. So it took a long time for me. But it's just like when we were kids, right? The only way I got to know how to play football and basketball is going out in the court with all my buddies, or going out in the field, or putting the bikes down and saying, hey, we can't hit it to right field today. We're only allowed to hit it to left because we only got 4 guys playing, right? So those things happen real quick.
Well, wouldn't you say that there's probably a lot of athletes that struggle once they're done playing, that have the gift of being able to do what you guys have been able to transition? They just don't really know how to tap into it, or it's it's there because it's natural from them being a point guard or a quarterback.
Well, and I think that it comes back to, like, you had some phenomenal coaches, it sounds like. And a good coach when you're young can teach you things that stay with you for the rest of your life.
Right.
And some coaches just don't see past the court. And good coaches will see past that, and they know that a great experience that they teach you can carry on with you through the rest of your life.
One of the things that I always did at Rice, and I saw a lot of my teammates not doing this, which was always amazing to me, is I really got to know the alumni and the donors. I mean, they were coming to games, they would go on trips with us, engage them, and one of the guys that I got to know on a trip that we went to Japan, he hired me for my first president role, and it was just through that connection of getting to know him while I was at Rice. He saw the leadership skills, he saw them firsthand, and was willing to be a mentor, and got me a huge break in my career.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't think I've done enough of that. I mean, I played for 7 teams, played all over the country, and I still regret not meeting more people. Right, because I was dealing with my coaches and my family, but I didn't do enough functions to go out and meet more people, because the opportunity is in front of you, and if you don't grab it, then it passes you by really quick.
Well, I think about that too. I went to school at Arizona, and I did not play sports there, but even people who I was friends with in fraternities and I just met social and stuff, I didn't advance those relationships where now when I think about it and I know where they came from and what they're doing now and stuff, I'm going, why wouldn't I just have said something, in passing, like, hey, I'm gonna give you a call or whatever, instead I let it go, and now those guys are head of movie studios and stuff like that. I'm going, boy, that would have been a good contact.
We don't all have Kevin's intuition with that. Like,
I
was so worried about just playing football, and that's what I love to do, and you don't think about that. You don't think about the future. And it seems like you understood that.
You had a clear future in the NFL, though I did not have a clear future in the M.B.A. So
it wasn't clear.
I was more necessity there.
I had no idea I was going to go there. I mean, until I started getting some calls from some of the pros. But I was a 7th round pick. Got invited to the combine just to be the guy who throws the football every day, and I was more than happy to go do that. But I really never thought I was going to be in the NFL for 15 years. But, when you get the opportunities, you got to take advantage of them.
Absolutely.
Now we've been through, most of your life. Now we're getting into your professional career. You graduate from Harvard Business School. What was your next step after that transition?
The next step is I went to work for a global consulting firm called Bain Company, and I knew that I was not going to be a lifelong consultant, but I knew that Bain had a great reputation of helping people kind of leapfrog their careers into companies, and I knew I wanted to run businesses. So I was at Bain for exactly 1 year, and my client happened to be in Las Vegas that produced trade shows. They asked me if I would come on board to be their head of operations. So I did that, and then over the next 3 years, worked my way up to be the CEO. It was about a $500 million company that was a public company that in the time period I was CEO, we almost doubled it and made it a worldwide business.
Wow.
And from there, so we lived out in Las Vegas and 300 days of sunshine and lots of golf. It was a great place to live.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to work with a private equity owned business because I really like the way that private equity is aligned as shareholders and think about things a little longer term. And so I made a really odd move. So instead of designing and setting up trade shows, I went to work for a company called 3 Day Blinds that manufactures and sells window coverings to consumers.
Right.
So it was a direct marketing business, B2C business that was coming out of bankruptcy, but it was owned by one of a really large private equity firm called TPG, Texas Pacific Group. And we turned that around and I got that growing. And then one day I got a phone call from a recruiter. He said exactly this. He said, Kevin, I've been trying to fill this broadcast television role for a year, and everyone tells me I need to speak with you, but you run a window covering company. Why in the hell am I speaking with you? And I said, well, good to meet you. And,
Nice to
tell
meet
me,
you.
Tell me what the business is. They told me the business. And I said, well, people are telling you to speak to me because it's very similar to what I did in trade shows. I mean, completely different technology, but essentially all of your employees, we're a broadcast television business that helps bring kind of live content to air for big networks. All of our employees are sitting out by the dumpsters in a parking lot somewhere by an arena, hard to communicate with. You have really high value assets, and you need to get kind of asset and people utilization in order to win, and you need relationship based selling and have those type of skills. And I said that's the same thing I did.
Right.
I said, and by the way, you have nowhere to grow. You're the largest player in the U.S. and there's no way you're going to grow any further in the U.S. So I came and interviewed, and I met with a woman named Deb Honkus, who's our founder.
Yeah.
And she and I hit it off. She's from Lower Borough. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So has NEP been a Pittsburgh company the whole time?
The whole time, yeah. So Deb was one of the founders, and and she has created the largest player in the world in this space.
Wow.
And she's been a fantastic partner with me, and so I took over for her, and we've just been growing ever since. We're now in.
And that got you back into sports?
Got me back into sports, yeah. And now a lot of international travel now, so we're in 22 countries now, and we're substantially larger than we were when we started this.
Wow.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit, so when you went back and you had to work your way up,
Yeah.
right? Like a lot of people start like that and they have to push through the company to get to where they want to go. What was that part like for you?
At the Las Vegas company where I
Yes,
came
yeah.
in? Yeah, so it was interesting because I had been a consultant for the company for a year, and my job on the consulting side was to be out in the field and understand the field operations. And so I had built all these great relationships in the field. So when I came in, I felt like I had a real big head start, and I knew what we needed to do. But I was able to leverage those relationships in a way that that it was great for me and great for the company. And then I moved into a sales role, and then I moved into a chief operating officer role, and then fortunately one day my boss came to me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you're going to become CEO." I'm like, "Well, where are you going?" And he said, "I'm running the parent company." So that ended up being, a lot of things. It's just a lot of luck that goes into things, right? You can control how hard you work. You can control how prepared you make yourself. You can hopefully go get results. But you've got to be in the right place at the right time. And that's true in sports or in business. It's just a lot of kind of good bounces that go your way, and that's been a big part of my career as well.
Was it them coming to you to move up, or was it you saying, how did you make that transition? Because I always wonder that. Like,
I always say that kind of career development is more than 50% on the employee. And so how mine worked was when I was a consultant, I went to the CEO, and he said, "What do we do next?" And I said, "Well, you hire me to be your head of operations, and I know all we need to go do because I just did this work,
right.
and I have all the relationships within your company." So he did that. And he said, "Now we need to grow. How do we do that?" And I'm like, "Well, the last work we did was this new sales work, which we haven't done anything on, and I'm the one that led that work, so you should hire me to be your head of sales." And so it was a credibility that I had with him, but it was also you're not going to get something in no one's going to be looking out and saying, "Hey, what Kevin needs to go do next." You got to be looking out for your own career.
Right.
You got to be have the skills in which to be able to go do that and be prepared to be someone to tell you no or not yet. But I think you got to be assertive. Is my view.
Is there someone now that you still kind of lean on for advice, or like on a professional level? Maybe Emily at home.
I'm a member of organization called Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and it's made up of CEOs and presidents of certain size businesses. You have to be under 50 in which to join the organization. There's like 26,000 CEOs in this organization around the world. Wow. But the chapter here in Pittsburgh is about 100 people, and there's a group that I get together with of 9 people that we get together every month and have real conversations about how do you, real confidential and hard-hitting conversations, how do you make the company better? How do you make yourself better? How do you make yourself a better husband, a better father? And so that's a group I really lean on a lot. And then I've got a number of mentors that I've picked up along the way that I still count on a lot.
Sure. Still friends with some of your buddies from Harvard and Rice and.
Oh, absolutely. It's been fun to watch both. Quite close with all of them, but it's been fun to watch a lot of my Harvard classmates and the things they do. I mean, you see Peloton bikes. That was a good buddy of mine that founded that business in the same class.
That's a great story, isn't it?
It's his idea too. I mean, it's amazing what it's done. But there's a number of folks that I'm quite close with from both places, and it's fun to see them in decision making, whether they're partners consulting firms or CEOs of businesses or doing something in sports. And again, that network and that camaraderie is still there as well. You just like a team, your classmates in school, you got to know each other really well, and you're always kind of willing to drop whatever you're doing to help somebody out.
So how many years have you been with NEP now?
I'm almost on 8 now.
On 8. And
yeah.
So out of those 8 years, what has been your best sports memory that you've been able to attend?
You pretty much go to pretty much anything.
Yeah, you can go anywhere.
It could. So what I would say is the 2 that I don't miss any year are the Masters and Wimbledon, and those are iconic venues, both of them, world-class service, the top of their game in their respective sports. So those are the 2 I go to on a regular basis.
So you were at Masters this year when
I was not there for the win. I was there. I was there on Thursday and Friday.
That was amazing.
But the one I think I like the best, which doesn't happen every year, obviously, is Ryder Cup. Yeah. The Ryder Cup, the atmosphere is unbelievable. You see it on TV. If you've ever been to one, it's so different than any other golf tournament, both in terms of the crowd, but also you see the pressure on the players when they've got teammates and
Yeah.
And so that's probably my favorite one that I go to. And then the Olympics are always high up there as well.
Yeah, I always wondered, so they go from a sport that's individual,
Yep.
now they're on a team. And how does that affect them? Because now all of a sudden, if you're losing the match, you're just not losing. Your whole team's losing. So that's a whole different perspective.
Country.
Yeah, and your country.
And your country.
Yeah, and I think some of the players have a harder time than others, right? I mean, and you got to be a good teammate. If you've been in an individual sport your whole career, you're not necessarily a great teammate.
Right.
Yeah.
You're competitive against the guy. You need to make the putt for your team, and you're going.
Well, I think that's how it's a big part of how they pair up the players together and the pairs, right? Is who can play together and who can complement each other.
Well, I think that's what's, there's so much made of the Ryder Cup captain each year, who it's going to be. It's not just random picking of players. You got to.
No, it's a big job.
Yeah.
Now we're going to come into our no huddle segment, our last segment with Kevin here, and we're going to fire some questions at him and get him to answer them real quick. All right, Dave, shoot.
All right, Kevin, if you could trade places with any athlete ever throughout time for one day, who would that be?
George Brett, Kansas City Royals, when he was trying to hit 400.
Wow, that was quite what did he end up, 390?
390,
yeah. Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I have his rookie card. It's one of my favorite cards ever. I mean, it's just.
I have that one in my office as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. I have that one and Roberto Clemente. Those are my 2 favorites.
The Yankee Stadium tantrum too is one of the classic moments.
Pine Tar game, yeah.
That was awesome. Yeah. What about your biggest pet peeve?
Yeah, I think it's similar in sports or in business. I'd use separate terms. Lack of hustle in sports or laziness in business if someone just doesn't care enough to go be part of the solution.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
That could be irritating.
So you mentioned you've played against a lot of great athletes, but who is the best player you've ever played against?
Yeah, it's probably surprise you. It was Travis Best. So I played against Michael Fenley, the Fab Five, Penny Hardaway. All those guys were outstanding, a lot better players than me. But Travis Best was the only guy that could tell me what spot he was going to, get to that spot and shoot it over me and still make it.
And he did that.
He did it, yeah.
That would do it. That would do it.
What do you think the most overrated thing in the sports world is today?
Most overrated thing, I'll say broadly, potential. So when someone says someone has potential, I always think that's overrated. Tell me who's gotten results in the past and who works hard and who's going to go be determined.
Well, off side note, Harry, my wife's dad, he coached high school football here in PA for 42 years, and he would tell every kid all the time, you know what the potential means? And at least, now what's potential mean? He goes, it means you ain't worth the shit. So that's what he used to tell us all the time. You got to do something. So you've been all over the world. I mean, travel with your work and everything. What's your favorite vacation spot? Like, where do you want to go? Where do you want to take your family?
Sydney, Australia, by far. It's my favorite place to go for work. It's my favorite place to go vacation. It's just an amazing place.
What do you like about it?
For those that haven't been there, the way I would describe it is it's more beautiful than San Francisco. It's got kind of the weather of Southern California. It's got the beaches of Hawaii. It's got English speaking, as primary language of Australians who are a lot of fun. They like Americans, and it's just a unique looking city with a lot of fun things to do.
Great.
How about the most famous person in your phone?
It's probably Venus Williams. She's on my board. I still get excited when I get an email or a text from Venus, even though I talk to her regularly. It's probably her.
That's pretty exciting.
Have you ever rallied with her? Or?
I have not rallied with her. I've bowled against her, and we've determined we're two of the worst bowlers of all time.
Oh, yeah.
You put the bumpers up?
We should have put the bumpers up. Now, we both could talk a lot of trash to each other. We just couldn't execute on the trash talk.
Right. How about your favorite stadium that you've ever been into?
Favorite stadium, I would say as a venue still, it's Wimbledon. Which is not just one stadium, but the whole complex.
Yeah. When you can have an all-encompassing great service, great experience.
You just feel different when you go there and have a PIMS and watch some tennis and tennis isn't even my I played a lot, but it's not even top of my sports list, but I still love that venue.
Might see the Queen too if you're lucky.
My least favorite stadium to play in ever was Kansas City. I played there. I was with the Redskins.
Yeah.
And we're all getting ready to play, and they sing first time I've ever there. They sing the national anthem.
Yep.
And at the end, they just go, Chiefs.
So it's the home of the, instead of the Brave, everyone says Chiefs.
And then all of a sudden, the stealth bomber flew over, over, and our whole team. I'm looking down. Everybody's like, "Whoa!" And I'm like, "Oh, it's going to be a long day."
I've had others tell me the same thing that said that even though they were warned, that when they do the Chiefs, they just feel it.
It just goes right through you. It's a pretty amazing feeling.
Wow. Okay, last one. How about the loudest stadium you've ever played in?
Loudest stadium ever played in. I don't really remember loud stadiums because those are easy to play in my mind. I remember the quietest stadium I ever played in, and that was TCU. And I remember I was bringing the ball up the court. I'm sorry to answer the question differently, but I remember bringing the ball up the court, and the guy in the front row is having a conversation. Hey, Rabbitt, you building a house? That was a great brick you had last possession. And it's so quiet in there that you hear that one more so. The loudness is great. You feel like you're part of the game.
Yeah, it's like you have headphones on almost. You just tune it all out and you just play. Well, we really appreciate you coming in and being part of the Huddle and letting us pepper you with a bunch of questions, and hopefully our fans get out of it and a few people understand, maybe how they get to where you are someday.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
All right, that's No Huddle, and we're going to break it there, and we'll let you all know when we get back next week.